I am sharing my screen. So do you see second order linear ODE lecture? So this is lecture 6, huh? Lecture 6 at your end?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Are there any questions from last time? We go ahead. Okay, so I take your silence as a yes and we go ahead. So let's just quickly recall what is that we did last time. So we considered a second order linear homogeneous differential equation uh, with the coefficients P and Q being continuous on a certain interval I. And suppose that y1 and y2 are two solutions of such an equation. Yeah, so any such equation which is second order linear homogeneous uh, will look like this, right? A d square y by dx square plus px dy by dx plus qx y equals 0, right? What we are assuming is that p and q are continuous on an interval I on the real line. Now, and y and y2 are two solutions of this equation on the same interval, right? Then the upshot of the discussion we had last time is the following. Then each of the following statements are equivalent. Yeah? So the very first statement is that y1 and y2, this set, so these are linearly independent on the interval y. The second statement is the following, that every solution of the second order linear homogeneous differential equation one on the interval I is in the linear span of y1 and y2, right? This is because by the dimension theorem we agreed that the solution space has dimension 2. What we have in part 1 is that y1 y2 are linearly independent. So the dimension theorem says that this must be the basis, right? Please mute yourself. uh, yeah, okay, some noise coming in, so let's just go ahead. And part 3 is that we learned how the concept of linear independence can be rephrased in terms of the Wronskian. And this says that the Wronskian of y1, y2 is non-zero at some point in the interval I. In fact, much more is true, that the Wronskian of y1, y2 is non-zero throughout the interval I. Yeah, and 4 implies 1, which means that y and y2 must be linearly independent on I, right? So is this okay? Everybody believes that this theorem was indeed done last time. Is that okay?
Ma'am, so if it's zero, it will be zero throughout the interval. But let's say if it's some constant value one or two, that doesn't imply that it will be two throughout the interval, right?
That doesn't. Yes. That
But
cannot
I
be.
think in one of the questions that was happening. I don't know how.
So that was this practice problem that you're referring
Yes,
to. See, actually,
yes.
I looked at it one more time. I'll just take it up after the class. It is
Sure,
not
ma'am, sure.
homogeneous. Uh,
Oh,
it is not homogeneous, that problem.
okay, okay, right.
Yeah, so we'll
We'll
just
take it
take
after class. Yes.
after the class. Yeah. Okay. All right. So for now, let's just go ahead. Okay. What is that I would emphasize at this point of time is the following, that this theorem requires P and Q to be continuous on the interval I. And here's an example to emphasize this fact. Let's consider the following differential equation: x square d square y by dx square minus 4x dy by dx plus 6y equal to 0. Right? So this is what we know, right? X square and x cube are two solutions of this differential equation. One can check they are linearly independent solutions. So where are these two solutions?
I mean, I did not get it.
So meaning what is the interval of validity of this solution?
0 to infinity and minus infinity.
Yeah, minus infinity to zero and zero to infinity.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to say. Yeah. But the Wronskian of x square and x cube at the point 0 is 0, right? So one has to be careful. In applying this theorem, you need to check each and every hypothesis is being satisfied, right? Is that okay? Everybody with me up till this point?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So having understood all of this, let us move forward. And so let's look at second order linear homogeneous ordinary differential equation. And unfortunately, there's no general scheme to find a basis of solutions. However, there's something that one can do. However, if we know one non-zero solution F, then there is a method to find another solution to a homogeneous second order linear differential equation in standard format. So how do we find G given F? So we also want to make sure that G and F are linearly independent, right? Because if G is dependent of F, there's nothing to be done there, right? G is some scalar multiple of F, right? So let's see, let's make an attempt. Let's set G to be some function V of the variable X times the given solution F, right? Now, how do we choose V? So V is to be chosen appropriately so that F, G are linearly independent. And the second thing is that G as defined above is indeed a solution of the given ODE, right? There are two conditions here to be satisfied, right? Okay. So is it possible that V is a constant?
No.
No, it cannot be, right? Because we are looking for a linearly independent solution. Yeah, F and G must be linearly independent, right? Because if V is a constant, then G is actually a scalar multiple of F, and we don't get anything new. Okay, all right. Now, for G to be a solution of the given differential equation, G must satisfy that equation, right? So let's plug that in. So that means that uh, second derivative of G plus P times the first derivative of G plus Q times G must be 0. Correct? Okay. So let's plug in. G is the product of V and F. So what we get is the following, right? So let's move on to the next slide. So I've just rewritten the last statement here. The second derivative of Vf plus P times the first derivative of Vf plus Q times Vf equals 0, right? So if you do some calculation, what is this saying? Yeah, so the right hand side is 0 is equal to, so let's just compute the second derivative. That means differentiating once V times F plus V times the derivative of F and the derivative of all of this plus P times derivative of V times F plus V times the derivative of F plus Q times V times F. Correct? This is just a restatement of the first equation here. So let's just take this derivative one more time. What do you get? The second derivative of V times F plus 2 times V prime F prime plus V F double prime plus P V prime F plus V F prime plus Q V F, right? Now we arrange the terms here in the following manner. So what do we gain out of it? So let's see. I put together all the terms which have a factor V, which means that I have V times F double prime. So the second derivative of F plus P, the first derivative of F plus Q times F plus the first derivative of V multiplied by 2 the first derivative of F plus PF and so on, right? So anyways, what is the advantage of all of this is the following, right? So recall that F, what we started was a solution of the OD, right? Which means that the coefficient of V in here cancels out, yeah? So that's 0, right? So what are you left with? You are left with V prime to F prime plus PF plus V double prime F equals to 0, right? Provided you can justify all of this division, you can and you what you get is the following differential equation now in the variable V, right? In terms of the derivatives of V and F, right? So what do I have? V double prime by V prime must be the same as minus of 2 F prime by F minus P. Let's integrate this. What will I get? I will get the following, that the logarithm of the absolute value of V prime is same as the logarithm of 1 by F square minus the integral of P. Correct? Is that okay? which means that I can write down V as the following. Yeah, so I have the derivative of V, which means that in order to get V, you integrate one more time, right? So what you get is the following. So you get the integral of, and the integrand is the following. So in the numerator, I will have an exponential, and the power is minus of integral p dx. And in the denominator, you have f square. Correct? Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what does this give? We give you, if you plug this in this here, plug this in here, then V times F is indeed a solution to the given OD, right? Okay. Okay. Now, so there are two conditions, right, which we want G to be to satisfy. One, that G is indeed a solution to the given differential equation, and two, G and F are linearly independent, right? So far, all of this has only made use of the second fact that G is a solution of the OD. So, is G indeed linearly independent to F? Let's just check. Let's check, right? Okay. So it turns out that yes, indeed, F and VF are linearly independent. And how do we check this? We will just appeal to the Wronskian, right? So let's compute the Wronskian of F and V times F. So this is by definition F multiplied by the derivative of VF minus the derivative of F times VF, right? Which is nothing but F square, the derivative of V, right? But remember, the derivative of V is nothing but the following, right? You recall the last equation on the previous slide over here, right? So in fact, this one, the second last equation on the previous slide. So you can read the derivative of V from here and plug that information here. So the derivative of V is a certain exponential, exponential of some power here, and denominator is F square. So assuming you can make this cancellation, what you get is the Wronskian is the exponential of something which can never vanish, right? So it seems that this method is going to yield us another linearly independent solution to the second order linear homogeneous differential equation in standard format, provided I can figure out one such solution. Yeah, is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I hope this is okay with everybody present here. So let's see an example. So let's look at this equation: x square d square y by dx square plus x dy by dx minus x equal to 0. Yeah. And let's try to find solutions of this differential equation. Yeah. So let's rewrite this equation in standard format, which means that I divide by x square throughout. So P here is 1 by x and Q is 1 by x square, right? Okay. And now we notice that fx equal to x is indeed a solution to this differential equation, correct? Okay. And we will appeal to the method that we just discussed to get another solution. Okay, so let's say that suppose that G, which is x times V, be another solution. We need to determine the unknown function V here, right? Okay, so then our calculation shows that V is actually given as integral of something, right? And what is the integrand? The integrand is the exponential of minus of integral P divided by F square. What is F? Recall, F is one's given solution, or something that you found of the given differential equation, and P is the coefficient of dy by dx here in the ordinary differential equation, right? So if you plug that information in here, what do you get? Please mute. Yeah. Um, so sorry for this interruption. Okay. So if you plug this information in here, what do you get? You get that V turns out to be minus of 1 by 2x square. So which means that any solution is of the form Cx plus d by x. Correct? Is that okay?
Ma'am, I have one doubt.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, we are writing that G is equal to V of X, but and then we are doing all of this. But then in the initial assumption, we assume that P and Q are continuous, but here P and Q are not continuous, no?
No, P and Q are continuous. Where? I didn't
I mean,
it didn't
yeah,
didn't specify the interval here. So let's take, we will stick to either minus infinity to 0 or 0 to infinity.
okay. I mean, that's not for real numbers, the whole real line.
Not the entire real line. I have to find an interval. So I have to either choose work with minus infinity to 0 or 0 to infinity, because there is singularity at the origin in this
Got it,
particular
ma'am.
example, right?
Got it.
So
Yeah.
maybe, I should have been careful and I should have written what is the interval where we are set, considering all of this, right? So is that
Ma'am,
okay?
here,
Yeah.
ma'am, and here if we first plugged in f of x is equal to x and we found corresponding v.
Correct.
And if we plug in the solution which is cx plus d by x in the first equation, and we find, means how are we sure that we will not find another v? Like the second v will be 1.
Say that again. What do you mean by second v? I did not get
Means
you.
if I do the same process,
Yes.
first of all we used f of x to be x, and
Yes.
this time we will be using f of x to be cx plus d by x.
So you say that instead of, so you start with fx is equal to cx plus d by x.
Yes, and
Yes.
so how many iterations we should be doing so that we end up having the correct solution? Is it something related to the order?
See, so once you put this equation in standard form, and let's say you are looking at the interval 0 to infinity, right? So the dimension theorem tells us that the solution space has dimension 2, right? Which
Yes,
means
ma'am.
that when we started with fx equal to x, all I have to do is I have to find one other solution such that f and g are linearly independent, and any other solution of this differential equation must be a linear span of f and g. So that is the reason we have this thing here, right? That any solution of this differential equation must be a linear combination of x and g. So x is f here and g is 1 by x here. But your question is, what if I start with not f of x as x, but you start with f of x equal to cx plus d by x, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So we can do that calculation. That's interesting. What will you figure out as v?
1. V will be 1, I think.
Yeah. So that's okay.
Okay, if it comes out to be 1, then I don't think I have any doubt
One
there.
has to check. One has to check.
Okay,
Let me do.
yes, ma'am. Now my doubt is clear.
See, because the dimension of the solution space is 2, right? And any solution must be of this form, right?
It
So
will be
if we do-
100%.
Yeah. So is that
Ma'am,
okay?
can you increase a little bit volume?
Actually, I did increase the volume, and I am sort of holding this piece also very close to my lips so
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you get
Now-
no, but
now
it
it's
goes
good.
up and down. It goes up and down. Maybe Zoom settings need to be checked. So I will do that after the class. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So let me hold it very, very close. Okay. Yeah. So is it okay? Do you get it? Yeah. See, if you start with some other choice of f, you may get something else. But nevertheless, the solution space, it's going to be, you're going to be fine, because we know that the dimension is 2. Right? So this is a method very specific to second order linear homogeneous differential equations in standard format. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I had a small doubt.
Yes, please.
We are just saying that f into f of x is a solution for this differential equation, right?
Yes, we are looking for, yes.
So we should assume two values. One is gx by fx and another should be 1.
Say that again. If
I'm saying that we are assuming that the solution is vx into f of x, right?
not vx into f of x, the solution is v times fx. So the solution is v times f. So in this
Yeah,
case,
means v is a function of f. V is a function of x.
Correct,
v into f.
Right.
So we should also come out as 1. Like I'm saying that we should have, when we solve it out, we should assume two values. One of them should be 1 and the other one should be our solution.
That should not be linearly independent.
We are looking for another solution. No, v is 1. You don't sort of gain anything, right?
Yeah, but like I'm saying that did we eliminate that solution somehow in the method?
I did not eliminate it. See, if you go back to this thing, right? See, meaning we did not eliminate. We
Achha,
used
okay, हाँ,
we use the fact
V
that
prime is not zero. Okay,
yeah,
हाँ,
yeah,
V
yeah.
prime is
So
not zero.
yeah, all of that goes in here, and you know
Uh-huh.
also the fact that f is a solution will sort of ensure that this coefficient of v cancels.
Okay.
Sorry,
okay,
it's zero.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I will add, you know, which interval are we talking about here, so that nothing is unambiguous. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes, yes, please.
ma'am, for instance, I did not get that f of x is equals to x. Instead, I got f of x is equals to minus 1 divided by twice of x squared from the hit and trial method. And then I work the same process. But
Yes.
I am not getting the v of x is equals to x in this time.
So
I
you're
should get
saying
v of x is
minus
equals
of
to
1
x.
by, so you're saying minus of 1 by x square is a solution of this differential equation? Is that what you're saying?
No, what we minus of half x square, that thing we got as v of x.
Yes.
We got f of x is equals to x as a solution by hit and trial,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Similar way, by hit and trial, I got a solution that is v of x is equals to 1 divided by 2 x square, that of negative, that we got as v of x.
No,
on
but
solving.
See,
is
that
not a
cannot be a
solution, right? G
solution.
of x is a solution.
See, meaning, you know, just I don't think so. Minus of 1 by 2x square can be a solution, because you know, if the calculation on the slide is correct, then any solution of this differential equation is a linear combination of x and 1 by x. You know, c and d are scalars, so 1 upon x square cannot be a linear combination of x and 1 by x. No, is not in the linear span of x. So meaning either your calculation is incorrect or the calculation on the slide is incorrect. One of them has to be. Is that okay? Does it make sense to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
Meaning one of the calculation has to be incorrect. No, both cannot be true simultaneously, right? So I meaning we'll check this, but maybe let's go ahead. The whole idea is correct, right? What is to be done? So let's just, we will check this calculation maybe towards the end of our time. Yeah. Is that okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. So let's try and attempt to find all solutions of this second order linear homogeneous differential equation in standard format. And I'm going to make an assumption here. So instead of looking at functions, you know, so the coefficient of dy by dx and y in this case are scalars, right? So you're looking at a special case of second order linear homogeneous differential equation in standard format. So these are called as second order linear homogeneous differential equation with constant coefficients. Okay, let's see. So over here also, you know, you start with the fact, you start with making an observation that the solution exponential mx is a solution for this equation for some particular choice of m. You know, you need to choose m appropriately. Yeah. Is that okay? So all solutions of this differential equation are valid throughout the real line, as we shall see. Yeah. So the key to solving this equation is that that if y equal to exponential mx is indeed a solution for some real number r of this equation, then if you plug that in, what do you get? You get m square exponential mx plus pm exponential mx plus q exponential mx equal to 0, right? Which means that m must satisfy this quadratic polynomial, right? M square plus pm plus q equals 0, right? Okay. So this is called the characteristic equation of the linear homogeneous ordinary differential equation with constant coefficients, right? So let's just rewind. y equal to exponential mx is a solution of a second order homogeneous linear ordinary differential equation in standard format with constant coefficients if and only if the exponent that appears here m satisfies a certain quadratic polynomial. It's called as the associated characteristic equation, given as m square plus pm plus q equals 0, right? Okay, now the roots of the characteristic equation are given as follows, correct? So depending on whether p square minus 4q is positive or negative or 0, and m1 and m2, the two possible roots of this equation, are real and distinct, or this real but same, or complex valued, correct? So we will analyze each of this one by one. Yeah, is that okay so far?
Ma'am, this characteristic equation is not unique, right?
This equation is not unique in what sense? See, once
Like,
P and Q are fixed, so then the equation is fixed, right?
like if I choose e to the power minus mx as a solution, then I would get m squared minus pm plus q. That is a different characteristic equation.
Correct, correct. So you start with exponential mx as a solution. So I'm saying y equal to exponential mx is a solution if m satisfies this. If you make a change here, then, you know, of course, the change is reflected here. Yes? Okay, all right. So let's look at the first case where m and m1 and m2, the solutions of the characteristic equation, are real and distinct, right? Which means that p square minus 4q is strictly positive, right? Okay. So, you know, evidently, so then the two solution y equal to exponential m1x and exponential m2x are linearly independent, right? So we have found two linearly independent solutions to the given second order linear homogeneous differential equation with constant coefficients, correct? So the general solution should be any linear combination of the given two linearly independent solutions, and we are quite done, right? Is that okay?
Ma'am, why did we say that e to the power m1x upon e to the power m2x is not constant and hence they are linearly independent?
No, because so what do you say, you know, f and g are, so you're just doing two functions, right? So f and g are linearly independent if neither is a scalar multiple of the other.
Okay, got it. Yes.
Correct. Yeah, there's nothing more to it. Yes. Okay. All right. So this was the very first scenario. Let's look at the second possibility. The second possibility is when we have repeated roots, right? So m1 and m2 are the same, right? So what happens? So that means that the p square minus 4q equals 0, right? So and in this case once we know the quadratic equation, right, so we can write down the roots of the quadratic equation, and p square minus 4q is 0, so that means that m1 equals to m2 equals minus p by 2. Yeah, so this is m1 equal to m2. This is a typo here. So that means that exponential minus px by 2 is a solution, right? So the characteristic equation has no other roots, right? So that means what? It means that the given ODE has no other solutions of the form exponential mx. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes. So what do? We look at the method that we just discussed, and we sort of look for solutions of the form Vx, where V is some function of x, times exponential minus px by 2. Correct? Is that okay? Because, right? Because the ODE has two linearly independent solutions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in fact, the ODE has many solutions, but the solution space has a dimension 2. So I'm looking for another linearly independent solution. Once I determine that, then I will be able to actually write down the entire solution space. Okay. So, so if you remember the calculations that we did towards the beginning of today's lecture, so that gives us how do you determine V. So V is determined as follows. It is integral of something. Yeah, what is it? So upstairs, I will have exponential of minus integral P. Yeah, so P here in this particular case, example, is a scalar. It's not a function here. And downstairs, I will have the function F, which is one particular solution of the given ODE, in which case, so rather F square. So it is exponential of minus Px here. So which means that what? V in this case looks like Ax plus B, correct? For some scalars A and B, right? Okay, all right. Now we choose V to be X, and then let's just check. Please plug that in, and one should check that exponential minus Px by 2 times X is indeed a solution. And this is certainly linearly independent. This and the given solution exponential minus Px by 2 are certainly linearly independent, and hence the general solution will be obtained as a linear combination of these two, and we are quite done in this case as well. Correct? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's look at the third scenario where the discriminant of this, so we had a characteristic equation which is a quadratic polynomial, m square plus, so this is pm here, sorry, I will fix this typo, m square plus pm plus q equal to 0. This has distinct complex roots. Yeah, so this is a possibility only if only if p square minus 4q is strictly negative, correct? Now, so in this case, the roots of the characteristic equation are complex conjugate to each other, correct? Everybody agrees with me, right? So m1 must be of the form a plus iota b, and m2 must be a complex conjugate of m1, something like a plus a minus iota b for some a and b, right? Okay. So now, then what is exponential m1x? Exponential m1x is the following, right? So I believe, everybody knows what is the meaning of this when I have an iota here. So you adopt the definition that exponential it,
Cos and sine.
yeah, is cosine t plus iota sine t. So,
Yes.
so that means that this is exponential ax cosine bx plus I sine bx. And likewise, exponential m2x is exponential ax cosine bx minus I sine bx, correct? Now, so we get some solutions, but these are complex valued solutions, right? And we would like to have real solutions, right? Okay, so the exponential functions that we get here have a complex exponent, right? Now, how do we get real solutions from here? So we note that so what do? We note that linear combination of these two are also solutions to the given OD, correct? Yes. So we look at the following. Yeah. So we look at the function f defined as exponential m1x plus exponential m2x by 2, which is exponential ax cosine bx. And we look at g defined as follows: exponential m1x minus exponential, so there's a typo here again, m2x by 2 iota. Sorry, too many typos in today's class. Exponential ax sine bx, right? So instead of looking at complex valued solutions, what we do is we look at their linear combinations appropriately chosen, so that I get the following, right? So now all we need to check is, so f and g would be solutions of the given differential equation. Why? Because exponential m1x and exponential m2x are, and f and g are nothing but linear combinations of these two. What is to be checked is that f and g are linearly independent, correct? That needs a check. So for that, one needs to just, or you compute the Wronskian, whichever way you like. So having found two linearly independent solution, one can write down the general solution as a linear combination of these two given solutions, and we are quite done. Right? So even in this case, when there are complex roots to the characteristic equation, one is able to write down the general solution in the following format. Correct? Is that okay? So this actually completely settles the case when we are looking at second order linear homogeneous differential equations with constant coefficients. Yeah. So is
Ma'am?
this, yes, yes.
Yeah, but like I had one doubt. While constructing the linear combination, this g of x was constructed by dividing by purely imaginary numbers. So
Right,
like,
right.
why can't this c1 and c2 in this case be like also imaginary values, and why are we only restricting to like real?
Because we are in the real world, that's all.
So there's no problem, right? Like
See, even
all
if you
those.
have imaginary value, there nothing will go, the derivative will just, it doesn't affect the derivative, right? Constants are
Yeah.
just scaled, right? So nothing is changed by that.
Okay.
We are just looking at the real world. That's all. Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Ma'am, even if the Wronskian is non-zero at one point,
Hmm.
that means that the two solutions are linearly independent, right?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay, just to come.
So, one has to be careful here. So this is, I think, the very first slide here. You need to be careful that, so P and Q must be continuous on I besides other conditions. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, it may happen that, so you have to be just careful, right? For example, just be careful, right? So this is equivalent, non-zero at one point is equal to non-zero everywhere, but you have to make sure that all the conditions of this theorem, all the whatever is stated in the hypothesis is actually true in your example or in particular setting. Yes.
No, actually, we were doing this for P of x and Q of x, and here we have replaced P of x with and Q of x with real numbers. So I was just confirming if this is valid.
Correct. So in our case, P and Q are just constant. So they're constant functions. So they're continuous, right? Meaning
Right, right.
P is a constant function and so is Q in this particular setting of, second order linear homogeneous ordinary differential equation with constant coefficients. So we are fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are fine. Okay. So let's get back to, so we discussed the characteristic equation, and we also discussed each of the three possible scenarios, that of real and distinct roots, repeated roots, and complex roots.
Here the solution with complex entries would also be an solution, but for this course we should be only giving answers which are real.
For this course and in general, we are just in the real world here. We are not looking at anything complex, meaning for now, right? But if you're interested, have you had 205? No, not yet, right? You will do it later, right? That comes later. The complex analysis course comes later, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know about that
It's from
course.
second year.
Yeah, it comes later, right? So you will have enough opportunities to work with complex variables. True, they are all solutions, but we are just sort of interested in real valued solutions. Okay.
Ma'am?
Yes. So we have
can
just
you-
dropped the multiplicative constants 2 and 2i. That's all. Nothing changes. Yeah, go ahead.
Ma'am, in characteristic polynomial, P and Q are constant or function of x? In that.
See, in general, they are functions of x, P and Q. In general, they are. But when we are looking at second order, so for example, here P is 1 by x and Q is 1 by x square in this particular example. And now in this, now we are looking at a special case where P and Q are just real numbers.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, we are just looking at this special case, right? So in that special case, one is able to write down the entire solution space in this manner. You start with exponential mx, you solve the characteristic equation, and you can write down the solution space. Yes?
Yes.
Things are much simpler in this special case, is all that we want to emphasize at this point. Okay, all right. Where were we? We did this, and did we have an example? Not yet, right? So let's see. Oh, good. So here we have an explicit example. Let's look at the following second order linear homogeneous differential equation in standard format with constant coefficients. Yeah, so for in this example, P is 4 and Q is 13. Okay, so the associated characteristic polynomial is what? M square plus 4m plus 13. And the characteristic equation would be m square plus 4m plus 13 equals 0. Correct? So what are the roots of the associated characteristic equation? In this case, this equation admits complex roots, and the roots are minus 2 plus 3 iota and its complex conjugate, which is minus 2 minus 3 iota. Correct? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess my calculation is right. Okay. So we expect that exponentials with complex exponents are actually the solutions. And to obtain real valued solution, we consider the sum, which is exponential minus 2x 3x, and the difference, which is exponential minus 2x sine 3x, right? Which so you check that these two are linearly independent. Indeed, they are solutions. So any general solution is a linear combination of exponential minus 2x cosine 3x and exponential minus 2x sine 3x, right? So C1 and C2 are some real number here. Yeah, so I should write down what are C1, C2. So where C1, C2 are some real numbers. Yeah, I'll
And
sort
there
of
should be I in with C2, right?
I know. So you can sort of drop that multiplicative constant I. Nothing changes because we want to focus on real valued solutions. So you drop the multiplicative constants 2 and 2 iota. Nothing changes. They're still solutions. They're still linearly independent. Correct? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
ma'am.
Yeah, is that okay? Okay, all right. Anything else? Okay, so if this bit is okay, let's look at what do we have next. Oh, there's an example now. So what is the setting here? So we are looking at a cart of mass m attached to a wall by means of a spring. Yeah, and the center of the cart is at a distance x from the spring. Yeah. So what happens at the equilibrium position when x is 0, the spring exerts no force, and when the center of the cart is at a distance x from the spring, then the force exerted is given as minus of kx, right, where k is some constant. Yeah. So we apply the Newton's second law of motion will tell you that md squared by dt square is minus of kx, right? So this, is an example of a second order linear homogeneous differential equation with constant coefficients, right? K and m are all constants here. Yeah, m is the mass and k is also a constant, right? So how do we solve this? One can write down the associated characteristic equation, which is given as m square plus a square equal to 0. So I've done some manipulation. I've written a as square root of k by m. And what are the roots of this characteristic equation? They are complex root given as plus minus a. So the general solution, as we just discussed, can be, instead of looking at these complex valued solutions, we will look at sine of at and cosine of at. And the general solution of the above differential equation is any linear combination of sine at and cosine at. Yeah, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
this motion, I think, is described by a constant amplitude that does not diminish with time, correct? In this
Yes.
example, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's see. Okay, suppose that the cart is pulled aside to the initial position x naught with initial velocity 0 at time 0, right? So we are trying to determine these constants C1 and C2 here. So if you plug in this initial data available, then C2 turns out to be x naught and C1 turns out to be 0, which means that x is x naught cosine at, and x naught is the amplitude of this simple harmonic vibration. Yeah, I'm sure you know all of this much better than I do. So let me introduce this notation capital T for the time required for one complete cycle. Then A times T is 2 pi, which means that you can actually compute T in terms of the given constants K and M. Correct? Yeah. Okay. So this is just using the initial conditions. So the complete information of the vibration problem requires that we specify the initial conditions, yeah, namely the initial position and the initial velocity, and make use of that. Okay. Now let's tinker the previous example a little bit. Suppose that the cart of mass m experiences a damping force due to the viscosity of the medium through which it moves, and assume that the damping force is given as minus c dx by dt, yeah, where c is some positive constant. Again, apply Newton's second law of motion. The net force acting on the on this cart is given as md square by dt square, which is the damping force plus so I think I had a constant minus of kx, right. So yeah, so this is minus of kx that appears here, right? So this is again, what do I get here? So the situation here is again described by a second order linear homogeneous differential equation with constant coefficients, right? C, K, M, all are constant coefficients. How do you solve such an equation? You write down the associated characteristic equation and compute its roots. And depending on what b square minus a square is, in fact, whether it's positive, negative, or zero, there are three possibilities. Let's just go over each of them one by one. So if b is strictly bigger than a, which means that b square minus a square is strictly positive, then the characteristic equation admits distinct real roots, and the general solution of the differential equation is given as a linear combination of these two. So which means that I have some constant c1 exponential m1t plus c2 exponential mt. Using the initial conditions, one can actually compute what is c1 and c2, right? And one can work out the general solution. Yes. Is that okay? Meaning you have the given general solution and you use the initial data to find out what it looks like. Okay, so this was in the case when we have real distinct roots. What if we have repeated roots? Then you are given exponential of minus 80 as one solution of the given differential equation, and the other one is t exponential of minus 80. Yeah, this is just the example that we discussed a couple of minutes back. Again, apply the initial conditions to find out what are these constants c1 and c2. Correct? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Yes. It's not much here. And if b square minus a square is strictly negative, then the roots of the characteristic equations are complex. In fact, they're complex conjugate to each other. So suppose I'm going to write it as minus b plus minus iota alpha. Then one can write down again the general solution as exponential minus bt cosine alpha t, and so it's in the linear span of exponential minus bt cosine alpha t and exponential minus bt sine alpha t. Again, apply the initial conditions and find out what are these constants c1 and c2. Correct? Yeah, just an example of a second order linear homogeneous differential equation with constant coefficient. Yeah. So one should sort of analyze what is that happens. In some case you have a constant amplitude, some case you have a no vibration over damped motion and things like that. Yeah. So I'm sure all of this very well. So let's just go on. Yeah. Is this bit okay with everybody present here? Yes. Yes. Okay. Is there a question? Okay, I suppose none. Let's go ahead. Okay. All right, so we are just sort of interpreting here a little bit more that the solution in this case oscillates with an amplitude which decreases sort of exponentially, and one can actually write down the time required for one complete cycle. Yeah. Uh, okay, so I'm sure you know this very well. Sort of an expert here. Uh, as far as this example is concerned. So let me skip this discussion on this slide and move on to the next thing. So now we are interested in looking at equations of the following format, right? X squared d square y by dx square plus ax dy by dx plus by equal to 0. Yeah. So these are referred to as the Cauchy-Euler equations in literature. So A and B are real numbers here, and let's look at this equation on the interval 0 to infinity. And suppose that y equals x to power m is a solution to this differential equation. Yeah. So you've already seen, I think, similar examples in your tutorial 1, but let's see. So if you plug this in, so you need to determine for what values of m is y equals x to power m a solution to the given Cauchy-Euler equation. So if you plug that in, what do you get? You get m times m square minus m minus 1 plus am plus b equals 0. So this is a quadratic equation. This is called as the associated auxiliary equation of the given Cauchy-Euler equation, right? So remember, a is the coefficient here and b is the coefficient of y, right, in this associated auxiliary equation of the given Cauchy-Euler equation. Now again, one can write down the roots here explicitly, and depending on if this auxiliary equation has real distinct roots, then the question to ask is, are x to the power m1 and x to the power m2 linearly independent?
Yes.
Yes, they are. So then we are done, right? So any general solution is given as a linear combination of these two, and we are done. Okay, all right, very nice. What if we have the case of repeated real roots? So which means that m1 is same as m2 is same as 1 minus a by 2. So which means that we get only one solution from this auxiliary equation, right? So which means that we get only one solution of the associated Cauchy-Euler equation, which is of the form y equal to x to power 1 minus a by 2. Now, in order to find another solution, what do? You do the following, right? You say that we are going to determine functions v such that v times the given solution f is a solution of the given Cauchy-Euler equation, and we also are going to choose v in such a manner that g defined as v times f is linearly independent from f, right? So if that is the case, then we will be done. We will be able to write down any general solution of the given Cauchy-Euler equation by taking linear combination of f and g. Okay. So let's do that. So I'm going to differentiate g once, and then I'm going to differentiate g twice. So what will I get? I will get second derivative of v times f plus 2 times the derivative of v and the derivative of f plus second derivative of f times v. And this has to satisfy the Cauchy-Euler equation, which means that I will have the following. Correct? Is that okay? So x square, so I have plugged this in. This is g double prime plus ax. This is the derivative of g plus bv. So this should be g here, right? G. Yeah, I'm plugging g here. So this is a typo. I will fix this. Yeah, too many typos today. bvg, correct? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
It should
Yes.
be
BVF only. No?
Sorry, it should be bvg.
Actually,
Ma'am, G is equal
Sorry,
to
oh, GZ. So this is correct. So this is BVF, right? So this is correct. So I have already done that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So this is correct. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is correct as it is. Okay. So just restating the last equation on the previous slide and rearranging terms a little bit. And what do you achieve by rearranging this term? You notice that much like earlier example, the coefficient of V here is 0. Why? Because F is a solution of the Cauchy-Euler equation. So what is that you get? You get that this equation reduces to x square V double prime F, so plus 2 times, yeah, so this 2 is comes in here. Yeah, so this is so some adjustment here. So b prime x times 2f prime x plus af equals 0. Okay, so what is the advantage of writing it this manner? Now let's see what is that we have for f. So let's just recall that we actually know explicitly what f is, and I am going to compute what appears here in the parenthesis. Okay, so f of x is x to power 1 minus a by 2. So we can actually do this computation, and it turns out that this term in the parenthesis is actually equal to x to the power 1 minus a by 2. Is that correct? Which means this is the same as f, correct? Which means that this equation can be rewritten as x square v double prime f plus v prime x v f equals 0. Correct? Is that okay? Is everybody with me up till this point? Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Now, provided I can sort of cancel out f, so there's a sort of overlying assumption here. This equation takes the following form. Yeah, that v double prime by v prime, the second derivative of v divided by the first derivative of v is minus of reciprocal of x. Correct? Now we know how to solve this particular differential equation in terms of the derivatives of v, which means that the logarithm of absolute value of the derivative of v is minus of the logarithm of x, which means that the derivative of v is 1 by x, which means that v is the logarithm of x, which means that given f as x to power 1 minus a by 2, g, which is v times f, would read like logarithm of x times x to power 1 minus a by 2. So we have been able to find another linearly independent solution of the given Cauchy-Euler equation. Correct? Is that okay? So this
Yes, ma'am.
was, yeah, so this was in the case when the auxiliary equation has repeated roots, right? So we first discussed real and distinct roots for the auxiliary equation. The second scenario is when the auxiliary equation associated to the given Cauchy-Euler equation has repeated roots. Yes.
Ma'am,
Yes.
why didn't we use the direct formula of v of x equal to integral of e power minus integral, that form?
One can also do that. Nothing is lost.
But I think the integral is a little on the tougher side.
Yeah, maybe.
No.
Meaning, I don't think so. I think you might end up with the same thing.
Yes, it's the same answer. Yes.
It's the same calculation, right?
Yes, ln x, it comes out to be ln
Yeah,
x.
it's the same calculation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I could have avoided all of this
Yes.
calculation here. Yeah, you're right. It's the same calculation. Okay, all right. So, anyways, now we have been now we are now having found another linearly independent
Hello,
solution.
ma'am.
Yes, please.
That formula for v of x, which someone said earlier, that is for only for linear equation with constant coefficients, right?
No. See, right in the beginning we did this, right? Just a minute. So this was the very first thing that we discussed today. Over here, this example, right? This. So
yeah, it's for general.
It's for all general, right? This one. We also computed this v for constant coefficients, but there's also a calculation available in general also. Whichever way you work out, it's going to be the same because I'm essentially repeating the same calculation. There's nothing more, right?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, so let's get back to where we were. So this was constant coefficient case, and then started the Cauchy-Euler equation. Not yet. Now this was the example. Now is the Cauchy-Euler equation, the auxiliary equation, the case of real distinct roots and real repeated roots. Okay. And the third case is what we should. Yes, yes.
If I may interrupt, in the previous case, when we write that from that v of x is minus 1 by v prime of x is minus 1 by x, then we say that v is ln of x. Shouldn't we be saying that v is some constant times ln of x, and set that constant to whatever we want?
So you're saying you pick up a constant of integration here is what you want to say?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we have a constant of integration here? Would somebody like to answer this?
That gets solved when we are considering it a linear combination of these two solutions.
Right. So nothing is lost.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's look at when the auxiliary equation associated to the given Cauchy-Euler equation admits complex roots. So as before, the roots would be complex conjugate to each other. So which means that x to the power m1, which is x to power mu plus iota nu, will look like the following. Yeah, x to power mu cosine nu logarithm of x plus I sine nu logarithm of x. And similarly, x to power m2 will look like x to power mu cosine nu logarithm of x minus I sine nu logarithm of x. As before, we take the sum and difference and drop the multiplicative constants. So what you get are two linearly dependent real valued solutions to the given differential equation, and one can write down the general solution to the given Cauchy-Euler equation, in this case as a linear combination of these two. Correct? This is much like before. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay, all right. Very nice. All right. So now, so far, we have been discussing homogeneous differential equation, which means that the right-hand side was 0, right? Now, I think we have sort of developed enough background to now look at non-homogeneous differential equation and the associated this. So over here, we still assume P, Q, and R to be continuous on the interval I. And we still stick to the general setting of second order linear but non-homogeneous differential equation where the coefficients are assumed to be continuous on a certain interval I. So the goal now is to find solutions of this non-homogeneous differential equation. Okay. All right. So we will, anytime we have a non-homogeneous differential equation, it's a good idea to write down the associated homogeneous differential equation, which is obtained by, setting this right-hand side equal to 0. And by now we know how to solve this one here, at least in some cases. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, if we can solve the homogeneous differential equation, is it possible to relate to the solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation? Okay. So let's make an observation. So here is a result. So if we have a solution f of the non-homogeneous differential equation, right? So I have a second order linear non-homogeneous differential equation such that the coefficients p, q, and r are all continuous on an interval I. And I'm given that f is a solution, right? So I am going to write down the associated homogeneous differential equation. Recall that what does it mean? It means that so what is the associated homogeneous differential equation? So R is 0. That is the associated homogeneous differential equation. And suppose that y1 and y2 are two linearly independent solutions of the associated homogeneous differential equation. Then one can write down the entire solution space of the non-homogeneous differential equation. Yes, please go ahead. Somebody had a question? Okay, all right. Let me go ahead. So is this okay? Does this statement make sense to everybody? Given a non-homogeneous differential equation, is this okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ma'am, we can also put a constant in front of f, right?
Let's see as we are going to discuss the proof. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Will that disturb or will that be okay? Yeah. So okay, so what do you do?
y1 and y2 are independent. There is no information about f, right?
F is any particular solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation.
About linear independence with y1 and y2.
Nothing is known and it's not
Okay.
required.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see whether this question sort of makes some sense or not also. All right. Okay. So y1, y2 are linear independent solutions and f of the homogeneous differential equation, and f is any particular solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation. Remember the sort of very important condition here, p, q, r are continuous. You know, if continuity breaks down, then this theorem may not hold true. But let's see, let's fix the proof of this theorem first before we sort of do other things. Okay, so let's start with any solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation. Yeah, second order linear non-homogeneous differential equation. Let's let phi be any other solution, right? So what is that I want to show? All I want to show is, our goal is to show is that phi it looks like phi belongs to this set here, which is written in the parentheses, right? That's our goal. So let's consider phi minus f. Yeah, f is the given solution, and let's apply this differential operator L to the difference phi minus f, right? Okay, so this is differential operator, this is linear because so I can do this. So this is the differential operator L applied to phi minus the differential operator L applied to f. Okay, so to begin with, f is a solution of the non-homogeneous equation and phi is also a solution of the same equation by assumption. So that means that the differential operator applied to phi minus f yields 0, correct? Okay, what is the meaning of this statement? The meaning of this statement is the following, that phi minus f is a solution of the associated homogeneous differential equation. Is that correct?
Yes, and phi minus ft, so we can write it as c1 y1 plus c2 y2, and then
Right.
ft goes
Is
on that
that
side.
okay? Is that okay? Yes.
Yes.
Ma'am,
Yes.
could you please explain again?
Yeah, I'll just go over it one more time. So what am I trying to say? So given f a particular solution, let's start with let phi be any other solution of equation 2. Right now I'm going to write it as the following. So I'm going to write this as in the differential operator forms. There's a certain differential operator L acting on y. So this is RT. Yeah, this is the right hand side. So phi is a solution of this differential equation. Now let me consider phi minus f and apply the differential operator L. Yeah, what does it mean? I am doing, so I'll maybe this notation is confusing you. So let me write this down. So this is
Ma'am, I'm okay with the notation, but
You are okay?
how are we seeing that C1 Y1 plus C2 Y2 will come here?
I will explain to you. Yeah, so you are okay with the notation? Excellent. So phi minus f, so this bit is okay. So when you apply this operator L to the difference phi minus f, this is linear. That enables us to write that this is the same as this linear operator L applied to phi minus this operator L applied to f. Now f is a solution of 2, which means that this is RT, and phi is a solution of 2 by assumption. So which means that this linear operator L applied to the difference phi minus f equals 0. That means that phi minus f satisfies Ly equal to 0, which means that phi minus f is a solution of the associated homogeneous differential equation. What is that? Y double prime plus pt y prime plus qt y equals 0. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I got it now.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, is
okay.
that correct?
Yes, that homogeneous. Yes, I got it.
Yeah, right. So which means that, so I have actually written it on this slide also. We have that written here, that phi minus f is a solution of the associated homogeneous differential equation. And we are given that y1 and y2 is the basis of solutions of the associated homogeneous differential equation. So in particular, that would imply that phi minus f would be in the linear span of y1 and y2, which means that phi would look like some constant c1, c2 appearing in here. Yeah, so c1 y1 plus c2 y2 plus f. Yeah, and this will hold true throughout t. Yeah. Now the question here is, what will change if I have, let's say, an alpha appearing before f? Will
It
yeah.
will not satisfy. I was the only that pointed it out, but it will not satisfy because we have a R this time in the right hand side.
Because what will he have here? So we have a alpha here, right? If you have an alpha here, so you will have an alpha here.
Yes.
Yes. So then you have an alpha here. So it will be still be zero, no? Isn't it?
But it will be alpha times RT here.
Oh, it will be alpha times. Yeah. So it does. So it breaks down.
Yes.
Good. Yeah. So is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So okay.
I had one doubt.
Yeah. Tell me.
That where are we using the fact that P, Q, and R are continuous, except that it will directly affect the solutions? It is not going to affect this statement, right? That it will be a combination of LHS equals to 0 and this equation.
See, the continuity of P and Q is needed in order to say that the dimension, the dimension of the associated homogeneous differential equation is 2.
Okay, right.
Now the question is, where does the continuity of R come into the play here? Right. How does continuity?
I think it comes while finding f as the solution, so it is implicit over here, because while deriving f, I'm sure we'll be doing stuff with R.
No, I'm just saying that will affect the value of f of t, right?
I think R,
this theorem.
Yeah, I think R continuous is not required because f of t existing in itself means that R
See,
is implicitly.
I will see. Yeah, I will get back to you on how does continuity of R affect. Yes. So, but you sort of are convinced that continuity of P and Q indeed is vital.
Q is required. Yes.
That affects the solution for sure.
Right. So R, I will just check. Yeah, I don't know at this point of time. Yeah, somebody else wanted to.
Actually, while defining differential operator, we said that it is from C2 to C1. So R of t must be continuous, right?
Correct. Yeah, all of that goes in. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Ma'am, the dimension of homogeneous differential equation is 2. So
solution space of the homogeneous differential equation.
So, ma'am,
yes.
The dimension of this equation, the original equation, is also 2, or it's 3 now?
No, it's 2, only 2 constants, right? F of t does not have a constant around it.
So,
Something
but
for you to think about.
y1, y2, and f2 are 3 solutions now. So,
but we don't say anything, right?
I think dimensions should be
Something
3.
for you to think about for now. Yeah, I would like you to think about
fair
it.
enough.
Yeah,
I can see there's a caveat.
Think about it a little bit. Yeah.
It might not be a vector space in general.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't even make sense. Yeah.
Yes.
The question doesn't even make sense. Yeah, for now.
It has no dimension.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I would like to summarize, this discussion. Something to be sort of. So something to keep in mind, that in order to find the general solution of, in this case, second order linear non-homogeneous differential equation, what you do is get one particular solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation, and what you need is the general solution of the associated homogeneous differential equation. And with these two sort of bullet points, you are done. You have found the general solution of the second order linear non-homogeneous differential equation. Correct? PQ are assumed to be continuous, and the way it is stated here, even R is assumed to be continuous. I will get back to you whether one can actually drop the continuity of R. But for the now, let's just, to be on the safer side, let's also assume R to be continuous. Yeah, I'll get back to you if that can be dropped. Yeah, is that okay with everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's look at the special case when the non-homogeneous ordinary differential equation has constant coefficients, right? So the point of taking this up is the following, that we actually know how to write down the general solution of the associated homogeneous differential equation, right? Which in this case is going to be a second order linear ordinary differential equation with constant coefficients, right? So what do? You write down the associated characteristic equation, right? And find the roots. Okay. Uh, so let's see. But in order to write down the solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation, you still need to find one solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation. Okay. So there is a method to do this, and this is called as the method of undetermined coefficients. Yeah. Okay. So let us see what is that we have. We have given differential equation d square y by dx square plus p dy by dx plus qy equals r, right? Now p and q are real numbers here. So they are constants, and r is still allowed to be a function. Yeah, so r is, by assumption, a continuous function on the interval I. Okay. Now so this method has a limitation. This method of undetermined coefficient does not work for any arbitrary r, yeah, but only for very specific choices of r. So for example, one can appeal to the method of undetermined coefficient to find one solution of this non-homogeneous differential equation if r is or involves, the exponential, the sine function, the cosine functions, or r is actually a polynomial in t, or maybe a combination of these things, right? So let's see how. Let's actually try to work out some examples. So suppose somebody asks you, find a particular solution of the differential equation d square y by dt square minus 3 dy by dt minus 4y equals 3 e to power 2t. Okay. All right. So what do you do? What do you think? You should make a good guess. What should you look for? How should the solutions look like?
E raised to power mx.
Right.
So you should look at the solutions of the form. In fact, you can actually specify m also. It should be 2, isn't it?
2,
Because
yes, yes.
right? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yes.
good case, right? Because you differentiate, no matter how many times you differentiate, it's not going to kill the exponential, right? So that term is going to survive, right? Okay. All right. So let's put y equal to some constant times exponential 2t, and let's differentiate. So we are trying to make a good guess here. So let's apply this and see whether this satisfies the differential equation, and for what values of a does this satisfy this particular differential equation. Okay. So if we plug this in, what do you get?
4a minus.
So I will get, the first term is 4a exponential 2t. The second one, yeah, this calculation is right. 6a exponential 2t minus
A is
4a,
minus half.
right? Yeah, is that okay? So what do
Yes.
you get? A is minus half. So it indeed works. So minus half exponential 2t is indeed a particular solution of the given differential equation. Correct?
And then we can write it as the other solution we'll find through
Right.
homogeneous.
So one can do one can write down the general solution of the non-homogeneous differential equation, but at least in this example we are just doing the particular solution, right? But sure, one can write down the general solution also.
But we can find others also, like e raised to,
Right.
or will this the only one? Will this be the only one?
So our theorem tells us that the general solution is going to look like this.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So does that answer
Okay,
your
so it
question?
will, yes, it will always have a e minus half e raised to 2t term in it.
Correct. Because this is the general solution of this differential equation.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Any other questions at this point of time? All right. If there are no questions, let's see. Let's look at this. So suppose R is sum of R1, R2, Rn. So R is what? R is the right hand side of the non-homogeneous differential equation, right? So, and where each of these Ri's are either the exponential, the sine function, the cosine function, or the polynomials, then what do you do? How do you solve this differential equation? So, which is means that I am looking at the differential equation, you know, a y double prime plus px y prime, sorry, not px, y double prime py prime plus qy equal to rt. Instead of looking at that differential equation, I will look at actually n differential equations given by following: y double prime plus py prime plus qy equal to r sub it, right? And the hope is that if yt is a particular solution of this particular problem, then you do this exercise for each I from 1 to n and sum it up. So y is given as the sum of y1, y2 all the way till in. Then y is indeed a particular solution of the ODE, the non-homogeneous ODE that we are looking for. So this is a sort of just a small observation. And why do we restrict to the right hand side being exponentials and sine and cosines and polynomials? Indeed, that will be sort of evident from the examples that we consider. So this is sort of the limitation of this method. Yes. Okay. So is this okay with everybody present here?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So let's do one more example and then we perhaps stop for today. Okay. So let's look at d square y by dt square minus 3 dy by dt minus 4y equals 2 sine t. Okay. All right. And again, you know, the question is to find a particular solution of this non-homogeneous differential equation. So what
A
should
sine
be
plus
your,
B cos.
yeah, so what should be our good guess? Yeah. So
A sine plus B cos.
so you should look at a sine t plus b cosine t, right? Instead
Yeah.
of just a sine t. Why? Because when you differentiate this function, you are also going to pick up the cosine
Cos.
function,
Yes.
right? Right? Is that okay?
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
right. All right.
So, ma'am, but this is like good guessing. That's all.
It's good guessing, intelligent guessing,
Yes.
intelligent guessing, right? Okay. All right. So if you make sort of an intelligence gets to start off with, then you simplify your life.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's what it says. Okay, so let's start with y equal to a sine t plus b cosine t. Let's differentiate. Okay, so what you get is a cosine t minus b sine t. Let's differentiate one more time and let's plug it in. So if all of this is correct, then so so there's something that I have done here. So I had a equation in terms of sine and cosines, and suddenly all of that disappears, and I've set the exponents to be equal to 0. Sorry, the coefficients to be equal to 0. I can do that. Why can I?
Because they are
Because they are
linearly independent.
Because I'm using the fact that they're linearly independent throughout R. So which means that A and B turn out to be as on the slide, which means that one can read a particular solution of this differential equation as follows. Yeah, so you can actually compute what is A and what is B, and you are quite done, right? One can actually write down the general solution of this non-homogeneous ODE by clubbing this particular solution with a linear combination of a basis of solutions of the associated homogeneous differential equation. Yes. So I think I'll just stop right here for now. Yeah. Any question? I'll just take it. Let me just stop the recording.